Me and the girlfriend were on our way to her parents' house. I was invited to Thanksgiving dinner with them, which was a huge honor for me since I'd only met her parents 3 times. I was also nervous since her grandparents and aunts and uncles would also be there, who I had never met. We had a long trek from my house to her parents' house. It would be a good hour-long drive. About 45 minutes into the drive, we had to stop for gas. We pulled up into a literally dead Gulf station right off the highway, and I decided to fill up with premium for once to do my car a favor. Of course, it was cheaper to pay with cash, so I went inside with my head down as I dug my hand inside my wallet searching for a 10 and a 20. When I pulled the bills out, I instinctively looked up and said, 30 on 2, but I stopped mid-sentence. There was no one there. I looked for a bell on the counter, none. I simply called out, anyone there? There wasn't even a back door behind the counter that you would assume would lead to some kind of employees-only room. No, it was just completely empty. The only other door in this little gas station besides the entrance was the single bathroom, and that door was open, exposing the blackness from within the bathroom. I figured maybe whoever was manning the cash register may have just gone outside for something. I walked back outside and shrugged my shoulders at my girlfriend out of confusion. I looked around for maybe a porta-potty or an ice machine or something that could be distracting a potential cashier, but there was nothing. It was a relatively small little station with foliage surrounding it in almost all directions. I figured maybe somebody could be behind the building smoking a bogey or a doobie, so I went back there as a final attempt. Nope, just a dumpster sitting under a dimly lit roof light. I figured I'd just pay credit at this point and turn back. But as I did, somebody from out in the woods called over to me in a kind of whispery yell. My heart skipped a beat when I heard this. Hey! Hey! I kept hearing it from the woods. I took out my phone and flipped on the flashlight just to skim the outer tree line for anybody who could be hiding in there. As my now shaking hand rotated the phone slowly, the light momentarily revealed somebody from behind a tree. I took off back to the car and stepped on it out of there. My girlfriend was scared shitless just in reaction to my fear. I told her about the bizarre thing that just happened, and from that point on, she kept looking through the rearview mirrors just to make sure we weren't being followed. We pulled up to the next gas station we could find, this time one that actually had a cashier. I paid him $30 and began filling up. A van pulled up to the pump right behind mine, and a man wearing a cap stepped out, staring intently at me. I tried to act as if I didn't notice him, but when it got to the point where he was staring at me for at least 20 seconds straight, I had to look at him and ask him if there was a problem. He finally turned away. The second I was done, I hopped back in the car and took off once more. We made it to her parents' house safely, and I don't believe we were followed. Now, I wouldn't have shared this story if it weren't for the fact that a few weeks later, I did some research and found out that a 33-year-old Indian man who worked at the gas station we had stopped at had been murdered and his body was stuffed in the woods behind the station. I immediately gave the police a tip about the guy who I saw at the station, who was surely caught on camera. The following year on Thanksgiving, a similar murder happened at another gas station. We have since nicknamed him the Thanksgiving Killer. I fear only the worst once more this year, as he has still not been caught. As Thanksgiving knocks on the door, a dark memory is rushing back to me. I don't celebrate this tradition anymore because of what happened 2 years back. I am a 19-year-old average height girl currently living in California. My hometown is a small town in Georgia. Being an only child, I have always been a pampered kid. My parents were high school lovebirds who immediately got married after finishing high school. My dad owned quite a lot of land, hence we were more well off than many people living in the town. He inherited his father's house, and from outside, we were the picture-perfect family in everyone's eyes. But what happened inside the house was only known to us. We lived in the outskirts, right beside vast paddy fields. My dad had a Chevy and often drove us to the market whenever we needed things. Even though everyone thought my parents were perfect for each other, they fought like animals every night. I guess with time the young love died, and harsh reality surfaced for them. My dad screamed at my mother, and she abused him in every way possible. Between the two of them, my mom was the most toxic one, I believe. I saw her slapping my dad and pushing him many times, but my dad never raised a hand at her. Our society has this weird mindset that domestic abuse can only happen one way. I love both my parents equally, but whenever my mom hit my dad and screamed at him using obscene language, I hated her. Increasing toxicity led to the usual consequence, divorce. My dad had to bear a lot as my mom went on giving suicidal threats if he divorced her. It was the most disgusting phase of our lives. Our so-called happy family broke apart, and my mom stayed in Georgia while I came to California with my dad. My dad's lawyer proved how she abused him for years, and I too sided with my dad on this. Tears rolled down his eyes when he got my custody. But one thing I noticed that day which no one did, my mom didn't say a single word. She stared at me with a blank face for a few seconds and then quietly walked out of the courtroom. That was probably the last time I saw her until I turned 18 and a horrifying tragedy happened last year. My dad didn't keep any contact with my mom after the divorce, but he never stopped me from being in touch with her. I talked to her over the phone at times, and that was it. Sometimes I missed her, but then I realized those painful nights watching my mom hitting and kicking my dad, and my dad bearing this humiliation and insult for my sake. The awful memories of his past hit him so hard that he was scared to fall in love again. He kept to himself and raised me with the utmost care. It was probably my 7th grade PTA meeting when my dad found a new ray of hope in his life. He fell in love again with my English teacher, Melissa. She was a kind lady, and I liked her. They hit it off quite well, and soon she moved in with us. When my mom found out about this, she was obviously not happy, but this time she didn't create a scene and quietly disconnected the call. It was a week before Thanksgiving. I was sitting in my room, going through some brochures, thinking about where to go for college when my mom called. I picked it up immediately as it had been a month since I had spoken to her. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, my pumpkin, how are you?" "I'm good." Mom?" "Yes, my dear." "Are you all right? I know the time has been hard for you, and trust me, none of us want to hurt you. It's just Dad is happy, and maybe we should all be happy for him." "Oh, you are going to be such a lovely lady, I know, pumpkin, and you're right. Can you please put me on speaker and call your dad?" All these years, my parents never spoke after the divorce. My mom never asked for my dad. Hearing her say this, my heartbeat grew faster. I called my dad, and he entered the room along with Melissa. "Hello, Daisy." "Hi, James. Hope you're in good health. What was it you wanted to talk about?" I know I have done you wrong and never apologized for that. Honestly, I was so ashamed that I couldn't. So here I am, asking for one last thing from you and my daughter this Thanksgiving. Will you guys visit me? You can also bring Melissa. I would love to meet her. Just give me one more chance to have a good time with my family. I saw my father's face turn cold, and he looked at me, then at Melissa. He was going to say no when Melissa grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, "She's Courtney's mom, James. She too deserves to spend Thanksgiving with her daughter, and it has been 10 years now, just for a few days." My respect for Melissa grew more that day as I witnessed her kind heart. My dad agreed, and my mom said from the other side of the phone, "See you all at Thanksgiving then." We decided to reach there the day before Thanksgiving. Stepping into my hometown, I couldn't help but recall all the childhood memories I made here. The green paddy field still stood there, making our house the only shelter on the outskirts. But due to poor maintenance, I could see the house losing its usual luster. We knocked on the door, and my mom opened it in one go like she was waiting right on the other side. She hugged me tightly and then looked at my dad. "Hi, James. Please come in." We stepped in, and I introduced her to Melissa. Surprisingly, my mom went close to her and hugged her as well. My dad and I were both shocked to see her react so calmly. We all sat down and started to talk. My mom served us homemade lemonade, and after a long time, I felt my family was complete. But this feeling didn't last long as I realized my mom hasn't changed entirely. Though she was constantly bringing up topics involving an incident of their married life and trying to make Melissa feel like an outsider. She went to the kitchen, and my dad started apologizing to Melissa for my mom's mean behavior. I could see them regretting coming here, and I too felt this year's Thanksgiving is not going to be how I expected. I told my dad that we will leave the next morning ASAP. He went to the kitchen, probably to tell my mom not to bring up the past in front of Melissa. I took Melissa to my room to cheer up her mood. Getting our support and attention, Melissa's mood elevated, and we were laughing and talking like before. 10 minutes went by when my mom came in and stopped. She stared at me and Melissa with a cold face and said, "Oh, you are here. I was looking for you everywhere. You know, Melissa, my daughter, is a sweetheart. She and I spent a huge time decorating this room. She often said how no one can replace me in her life. You know what, Daisy? Your daughter is right. No one can replace a mother, but sadly you had such a beautiful family, and you ruined it all." Melissa walked out of the room like a badass, and I saw my mom's face turn red. Somehow, she got a long-needed lesson, and we all sat down for an awkward Thanksgiving dinner. While having the turkey, I found a wishbone. I decided to split it with my dad. My mom said to me, "Be careful what you wish for," and smiled. Honestly, I wished what any daughter would, harmony between my mom and my dad so that I don't have to choose between them. Somehow, we finished the rest of the dinner and went to bed. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard heavy breathing falling on my face. I opened my eyes and saw my mom standing near my bed in the dark. What are you doing here?" I shouted in fear. She gave a very bizarre smile, and her one eye twisted, making her look creepy. Then she said in a calm voice, "I know you wished for our family to be happy again, didn't you, pumpkin?" Before I could reply to her question, my eyes went to her hands, and I saw she was holding something in both her hands, and water was dripping from those things. I jumped through the switchboard on the other side and turned on the light. "What have you done? You don't have to choose anymore, pumpkin. Now you will have me by your side forever. What is Thanksgiving without thanking our loved ones for their sacrifice? I am thankful to your father and this expletive for sacrificing their life to reunite a mother to her daughter." I couldn't keep my sanity anymore. I picked up the night lamp and hit my psycho mom hard on the head. She wasn't expecting this and fell on the floor screaming in pain. I went on hitting her until her brain matter came out. She took away everything from me, and now the one person whom I loved the most, my poor innocent dad. When I was done with my anger, I called 911 myself, smeared in my mother's blood. I waited for the cops to arrive. I am the youngest woman prisoner in this high-security facility with a supposed chance of parole, maybe. But I am not going to ask for it. I am going to spend my entire life in this dark cell because I have no one to call family now. The outside world is way scarier than the world inside this prison, and I have had enough. No more family, no more Thanksgiving for me, that goes without saying. It was a rainy Thanksgiving. We have a small family, so our family gatherings are tiny. It was my mom, my two sisters, our grandparents, and I for dinner at my mom's house. My older sister Nancy has been moved out for years. My younger sister Jamie and I still live at home with our mom. Our grandparents live 20 minutes away. Our dad's side of the family all live in a different town. We were all helping out with cooking and such, and our grandma was bringing over some food as well. We always do Thanksgiving dinner at 6 o'clock sharp. Our grandparents arrived at like 5 o'clock. We had to go out and help them walk through the rain up the front stoop to make sure they didn't slip. It was really bad out. Once they were here, we put the football game on in the living room, and I sat with my grandparents and watched football with my grandpa, who was a big Cowboys fan. My sisters were in the kitchen helping my mom with the food. The rainstorm created for a more comfortable and relaxing Thanksgiving evening. That is, at first. When it was time to set the table, I went to help. We were all at the table by 6 o'clock as per the usual. We had a giant selection of food for the small amount of people we were: turkey, leg of lamb, potatoes, stuffing, corn, cranberry sauce, cornbread, and more food I'm probably forgetting. We were all at the table eating, drinking wine, and talking before we migrated to the living room where we all watched the football game. Then, sometime before the game ended, the doorbell rang. It was still pouring outside, and we weren't expecting anyone else. Our mom said, "Oh no, what if that's your father?" Long story short, our parents don't speak, but the idea of our father coming to surprise us wasn't impossible. My mom told me to go check who it was, so I went to the door and yelled through it, "Who is it?" But the sound of the pouring rain on the front awning drowned out the sound of a male's voice on the other side. So I opened the door with the storm door still closed and locked. There was a black man on the other side of the door. He was in some really big rain jacket with the hood up. When I opened the door, he walked closer and yelled something through the door. I had to ask him to repeat it twice before I understood him to be asking for food, saying he's hungry. Then he said something along the lines of, "The Lord will give you good karma if you spare some food." I said, "1 second." I went to the living room and told my mom there's a possible homeless or just very hungry man asking for food at the front door. My mom said, "Close the door," while my grandma said, "Give him some food." I said I'll make a little paper plate of food for him from the leftovers. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bunch of paper plates to account for the rain outside ruining them, and then sandwiched some of the leftovers together with them. Then I went to the front door where the guy was still standing. I held up the plate to show him, and he tried opening the door. I yelled, "Wait, it's locked," but I already was wary now after he tried opening the door. Regrettably, I still unlocked the door, and the second I started to push it open, he pulled it open with force and tried pushing his way through me. I instantly threw the food and held him back, yelling for my sisters to come help me. As Nancy came to help shut the door, I saw 2 more guys rushing up the front walkway to the door. I managed to push the man out enough to clear the door, and I helped my sister slam it shut. The second it was locked, I ran to the backyard door to make sure it was locked. I was the only able-bodied man in the house, and I felt like it was on me to protect the house. My family was in hysterics as we were brainstorming what to do. Not so shockingly, we settled for calling the police. My mom called while I kept going from window to window looking outside. It was hard to see out through the pouring rain, but through the backyard window, I saw a couple of men running through the grass to the back door. I'd imagine they tried opening the back door and failed, and then I saw them running through the grass again back to the gate. Then they were gone. When the police got here, the food that I dropped onto the front stoop was still just sitting there all scattered on the porch. Not that it wasn't obvious that those guys didn't come for the food, but it's something worth mentioning. Our Thanksgiving was almost turned into a complete nightmare if it weren't for my and my sister's quick reactions. I know my grandma had her heart in the right place wanting to help the seemingly needy, and I was influenced by her, but unfortunately, we live in a world where sometimes trying to do the right thing could bite you in the ass. We installed the doorbell camera soon after. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.